Hello, my name is Melissa Ramondelli.
I'm Gager.
And I'm Jenkins.
In the United States Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson writes,
"Governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed."
Today, we'd like to tell you a bit about how our government works.
So we'd like to present to you
American Government by the American People.
A lesson on campaign financing.
One thing about American politics that often confuses people who don't live in the US are how we run our campaigns. Two unique aspects in particular are their length and their expense.
The longest political campaign in Canadian history was 10 weeks long.
In Germany, political parties release just one 90-second TV ad every year.
In 2013, over two-thirds of income to Norway's political parties came from the government.
In the U.S., the act of running expensive and prolonged campaigns for presidential and congressional elections had become so critical to the success of a candidate.
The presidential candidates already began campaigning for the 2020 election several months ago.
So why do we have political campaigns?
Why are they the way they are?
We have political campaigns to provide voters with the information they need to effectively choose who represents them.
In the United States, the two primary organizations that run our campaigns are the DNC and the RNC, Democratic National Convention and the Republican National Convention. These organizations coordinate all the national level campaigns, especially those for president.
Campaigns provide information in a variety of ways, but perhaps most influentially is through the media. Candidates present information on their platforms and ideology by appearing on television, in debates, at local town meetings, and a myriad of other press opportunities.
More recently, as technology has an increased presence in the daily lives of Americans, a significant online presence is necessary for candidates to reach constituents.
Bill McKinley, our 25th president, won his election in 1896 by simply sitting on his porch and explaining his platform to passerbys. It goes without saying that times have changed.
In the 2008 presidential campaign, both candidates together spent more than $3 billion. In 2012, the candidates spent about $1 billion each, and outside groups spent more than $4 billion.
Consistently over the past decade, the congressional candidate who spends the most money is more than twice than likely to win their election. There is no way to detangle finances from their importance in politics.
So where is all this money coming from?
Who donates it?
Where does it go?
That's when things get tricky!
To understand how our elections work today, we need to understand how they've worked throughout American history.
And now, a brief history of American campaign finance.
The first law passed about campaign financing was in 1890. The Naval Appropriations Bill banned local politicians from seeking donations from naval yard workers.
BAM!
The first law passed regulating federal campaigns was the Tillman Act in 1907, which prohibited national banks and corporations from contributing money directly to presidential and congressional campaigns.
However, in 1921, the topic reached the Supreme Court in the case of Newberry versus United States. It was ruled that the Constitution does not grant Congress the authority to regulate political parties. Spending limits were therefore taken away, and campaign financing reform was weakened for much of the 20th century.
Flash forward to the 1970s. Americans are disillusioned after the Watergate scandal, and the actions of our politicians are becoming heavily scrutinized.
How can we trust that those in power have our interests at heart when their financial interests lie in the pockets of major corporations and billionaires?
In April of 1975, the Federal Elections Commission was founded, and with it came the first set of critical campaign finance laws in the United States.
In the landmark case Buckley versus Valeo in 1976, the Supreme Court ruled that although contribution caps indeed limit freedom of expression, those measures are justified by the need for government to prevent corruption. This appeased Americans' need for preventative measures to be taken against political corruption.
However, in the 2006 case Citizens United vs. FEC, the Supreme Court ruled that restrictions on individual contributions to political parties violated the First Amendment right of freedom of speech, setting a precedent that money is speech. Therefore, limitations on political money became increasingly equivalent to limitations on political speech. Thank God.
This resulted in the introduction of soft and hard money into politics.
Money contributed directly to a specific candidate is known as hard money.
while indirect contributions to political parties and political action committees, also known as super PACs, are soft money.
There's a limit of $2,500 on hard money, but soft money contributions have no limits. Soft money contributions allow an unlimited supply of money from wealthy individuals and lobbying groups to enter politics.
According to the Center of Responsive Politics, 0.26% of the population provides for 68% of all money donated to political parties.
One of the arguments for limits on campaign contributions is that encouraging candidates to raise money in small amounts from large groups of people will make them reach out to a larger number of constitutions and tailor their platforms to appeal to a wider and more socio-economical diverse base.
A common fear is that only those with money and connections will be elected, as they have the ability to sway interest groups and wealthy donors. With the interests of just a small percentage of wealthy individuals in mind, politicians are less likely to make the right decisions for the people, but rather the right decisions for the benefactors.
For example, Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, who received $3.5 million in donations from the National Rifle Association, voted against gun reform legislation in his state after the 2017 Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting.
An argument against limits on contributions is that more money, regardless of where it comes from, means more Americans involved in politics. With 220 million eligible voters, reaching such an expensive audience is no easy feat.
In order for all Americans to be informed, campaigns need to be long and have a wide reach. If limitations are put on those who donate most to parties, a large number of Americans will remain in the dark on pressing issues.
When the nation was founded, there was no intention for every American to be heard in politics, so campaigns were limited to only the elite. But if we want every American to be informed and show up for Election Day, then someone has to pay the price.
All countries handle their campaign finances differently. There are the countries who have no limits on contributions and spending.
These include Australia, Germany, Spain, and Turkey.
Some countries have limits on both contributions and spending,
such as Canada, Chile, France, Israel, Japan, and South Korea.
Others have limits on spending, but not on donations.
For example, Hungary, Italy, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom.
Lastly, there are countries with no contribution limits and no spending limits. This is where the United States and Finland fall.
The discrepancies between the different ways in which countries handle their elections raise questions regarding the nation's values.
Should a nation value the integrity of the election or the principle of free speech?
Where's the line between supporting a candidate and bribing a candidate?
What is the future of campaign finance in the United States?